The dog who played Toto was a female Cairn Terrier named Terry. Her trainer was a man named Carl Spitz, who ran a dog school in North Hollywood. She made 13 films for MGM under his care, from Bright Eyes with Shirley Temple in 1934 to Easy to Look At in 1945. The Wizard of Oz was the middle of that run. She was paid $125 a week, which was more than most of the Munchkins made. Her paw was broken partway through filming when one of the Winky guards stepped on it. She was replaced by a stand-in for 2 weeks while it healed. Spitz eventually adopted her, renamed her Toto for the rest of her life, and she lived with him in North Hollywood until her death of natural causes in September 1945. She was 11. She was buried on the grounds of the Spitz Kennels. The land was later paved over for a Los Angeles freeway. Frank Morgan played 5 roles in The Wizard of Oz. Professor Marvel on the road outside the farm.
Used by the priests of Isis and Osiris in the days of the pharaohs of Egypt.
The doorman at the gate of the Emerald City, the cabbie of the Horse of a Different Color, the whiskered guard, and the great and powerful humbug himself. He was a working character actor of Broadway and Hollywood who had been at MGM under contract since 1933. By the time Oz came out, he had been in more than 70 films. His frog-in-the-throat voice and rumpled bewilderment were what earned him the role. Louis B. Mayer had originally wanted W.C. Fields. Fields had asked for too much money. Morgan was the second choice. He would spend the next decade at MGM playing similar bumbling authority figures in more than 20 additional pictures. He died at his home in Beverly Hills in his sleep of a heart attack on September 18, 1949. He was 59. He had been shooting Annie Get Your Gun the day before in the role of Buffalo Bill. Louis Calhern eventually took the part over. Clara Blandick was in her early 60s when she played Auntie M.
Because you own half the county doesn't mean you have the power to run the rest of us. For 23 years I've been dying to tell you what I thought of you. And now...
The sun-worn Kansas farm wife who watches Dorothy be carried away by the twister in the opening reel of the film. She had already been a working character actress in Hollywood for 2 decades by then, mostly in supporting roles as mothers, aunts, and grandmothers. She would work steadily for another decade after Oz before retiring in the early 50s. Her later years were difficult. She was afflicted with severe arthritis and was gradually losing her sight. She lived alone at the Hotel Alto Nido in Hollywood. On the morning of Palm Sunday in 1962, after attending Mass and returning to her room, she laid out her professional photographs and awards on a bureau, put on her finest clothes, and ended her own life. The note she left said only that the pain had grown unbearable and that she was ready. She was 85. Bert Lahr had spent 20 years in burlesque and vaudeville before he came to Hollywood. He was the son of German-Jewish immigrants, born in New York's Yorkville, and by 1939 he was already a Broadway star. He was cast as the Cowardly Lion and in the frame story as the Kansas farmhand Zeke.
I am a coward. I haven't any courage at all. I even scare myself.
The role never quite let him go. He said in interviews across the next 30 years that after Oz he had been offered nothing but comic cowardice parts for the rest of his life. He kept working. He was one of the great Vladimirs and Samuel Beckett's Waiting for Godot on Broadway in 1956, opposite E.G. Marshall, but the studios kept calling him with lion-adjacent parts. He died in New York on December 4, 1967, of complications from a hemorrhage and pneumonia. He was 72. He had been in the middle of shooting his final film, The Night They Raided Minsky's. Rudy Vallee finished the scenes he had not yet filmed. Judy Garland was 16 when she made The Wizard of Oz. Her real name was Frances Gumm.
Why don't you come along with us? We're on our way to see the wizard now, to get him a heart.
And him a brain.
I'm sure he could give you some courage.
MGM had by then been dictating her diet and her working hours for 2 years. She was given amphetamines to stay awake, barbiturates to sleep, and chicken soup with cottage cheese as her only meals, 6 days a week. She would later say she had grown up on a diet of pills and studio-manufactured cheerfulness. She would spend the next 30 years alternating between some of the best musical performances in Hollywood: Meet Me in St. Louis, A Star is Born, Judgment at Nuremberg, and The Worst Kind of Collapse. She was married 5 times. She was hospitalized more than a dozen times. She attempted, on multiple occasions, to leave the industry entirely. On June 22, 1969, in the bathroom of her London flat in Chelsea, she was found by her 5th husband, Mickey Deans. The cause of death was recorded as an accidental overdose of barbiturates. She was 47. Her daughter Liza was 23. Billie Burke was the widow of Florence Ziegfeld.
I'm a little muddled. The Munchkins call me because a new witch has just dropped a house on the Wicked Witch of the East.
The producer of the Ziegfeld Follies and the man who had been Broadway's greatest impresario for 2 decades when she was cast as Glinda in The Wizard of Oz. She was 54. Ziegfeld had died 7 years earlier in near bankruptcy. Burke, who was a Broadway star in her own right, had spent those years working steadily in Hollywood to pay off his debts and support their daughter. Glinda was, in her career of more than 80 films, one of only a handful of roles her granddaughter's generation ever recognized her in. She kept working for another 20 years, mostly in comedies about fluttery society matriarchs, before retiring to a nursing home in Los Angeles. She died there on May 14, 1970, of natural causes. She was 85. Her memoir, With a Feather on My Nose, had been published in 1949 and was already out of print. Jack Haley was not the first Tin Man. Buddy Ebsen had been cast in the role and had shot 10 days of footage before an allergic reaction to the powdered aluminum in his makeup put him in an oxygen tent at Good Samaritan Hospital. MGM quietly replaced him. Ebsen would recover. Jack Haley would spend the rest of his life playing the man Ebsen almost died to become.
Yes, get up and teach him a lesson.
Haley had come out of Massachusetts vaudeville and had been on Broadway since the 20s. Oz was his one great screen role. He kept working, mostly on radio, then on early television, through the 50s and 60s, and eventually retired to Beverly Hills. He died of a heart attack at his home on June 6, 1979, at 79. His son, Jack Haley Jr., produced That's Entertainment. In 1974, Jack Jr. had married Liza Minnelli, Judy Garland's daughter, in what one gossip columnist called the strangest post-Oz footnote in Hollywood. Margaret Hamilton was almost killed during production. In the Munchkinland scene where the Wicked Witch disappears in a burst of red smoke and fire, the trapdoor timing was wrong. The flames caught her broom and her costume before she could fully descend. She suffered third-degree burns on her face and hands and spent 6 weeks in the hospital. Her stunt double, Betty Danko, would later be severely burned by a similar effect during reshoots. Hamilton was 36. She had come out of a career as a kindergarten teacher in Cleveland, into New York theater, and finally to Hollywood. She would spend the rest of her life fielding frightened children in supermarkets who recognized her voice from the film. She kept working. She played Cora, the Maxwell House coffee shop lady, in a decade of commercials, and once appeared on Sesame Street as herself, explaining to Big Bird that she was not really a witch. She died on May 16, 1985, of a heart attack at a nursing home in Salisbury, Connecticut. She was 82. Ray Bolger had originally been cast as the Tin Man. Buddy Ebsen had been the Scarecrow. Bolger, an eccentric Broadway dancer whose specialty was rubber-legged comedy, went to producer Mervyn LeRoy and asked to be swapped. Leroy agreed. Ebsen was then poisoned by the aluminum dust, and Bolger, in a role that fit his body language exactly, danced his way into film history. He kept working steadily for the next 45 years, on Broadway in the 50s, in guest appearances on almost every variety show of the 60s, in an occasional film. He was a devout Roman Catholic and gave interviews about it into his 80s. He never quite let the Scarecrow go. It was, he said, the one thing he had done that his own grandchildren would ever remember seeing. He died in Los Angeles on January 15, 1987, of bladder cancer at 83. He was the last of the 4 leads to go, the 4th traveler on the yellow brick road. There were 124 of them. They were paid on average $100 a week for their 2 months of filming, less than what MGM was paying Terry the dog. Most were adults with dwarfism, though a handful were children. Fewer than a dozen had spoken lines. The coroner who pronounced the Wicked Witch dead was Meinhard Rabe. The Lollipop Kid was Jerry Marin. The first trumpeter of the Munchkin militia was Carl Slover, who stood 4 feet 3. They kept meeting year after year at conventions and reunions. The last of them received a collective star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame in 2007. Meinhard Rabe died in 2010. Carl Slover died in 2011. Margaret Pellegrini, the sleepyhead with the flower pot on her head, died in 2013. Ruth Duccini died in 2014. Jerry Marin, the Lollipop Kid, was the last of them. He died in La Jolla, California on May 24, 2018 at 98. There were that day no more Munchkins left in the world. If any of these names still mean something to you, turn on notifications so the next one finds you. Another story waits on screen.